Namaum Vishnu Padaya Krishna Preshtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namane Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharane Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshitarane. So welcome, dear viewers, to the second installment of the ISKCON India Scholars Board discussion on the circumstances following the Supreme Court verdict in the ISKCON versus ISKCON of Bangalore court case. With me today is Krishna. I'm Basu Ghosh, General Secretary of the ISKCON India Governing Council, known as the Bureau. I'm also a member of the ISKCON India Scholars Board. Krishna Kirti Das is the convener of the ISKCON India Scholars Board, and Sridhar Srinivasa Das and Ram Aprameya Das are members of the ISKCON India Scholars Board. So without further ado, today's topic that we would like to discuss, we should get to that immediately, and that is the July 9th letter, Srila Prabhupada's final order on initiations in ISKCON. So on July 9th, 1977, Tamal Krishna Maharaj, who was serving as Prabhupada's secretary, wrote a letter. And in that letter, and Prabhupada signed a letter. He mentioned that from now on, there would be Ritviks. He used the word Ritvik, a Sanskrit word that means representative. It actually means a priest who performs a sacrifice on behalf of a kshatriya or a vaishya, or even a brahmana, or maybe even a shudra. But those priests would act on behalf of someone else. So in that sense of the word, he made this Ritvik idea. And what has happened since is starting in 1988, as we mentioned in the last podcast, two Prabhupada disciples came up with the idea that Prabhupada is still giving initiations, and they made a Ritvik system of initiation concept. Later on, a fellow named Krishna Desai, who never took initiation, wrote a book called The Final Order. And basically, in a nutshell, that book propagated the idea that this letter of July 9th, 1977 was Srila Prabhupada's final order on initiations. And suddenly, because of that letter, Prabhupada continues to be the guru forever and ever. So, today, one of the adherents of this Ritvik system of initiation wrote to me, Madhu Pandit Das was initiated by Srila Prabhupada. So I wrote back, well, were you initiated by Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur? None of us claim to be initiated by our Param Guru. Even Ramanujacharya, Prabhupada said that Yamunacharya was the guru of Ramanujacharya, but the actual history is that he was the Param Guru. He was inspired by the shiksha, by the teachings of Yamunacharya, but the Pancha Sanskaras were given by Mahapurna, not by Yamunacharya. So we'll open up the discussion on this topic with Krishna Kirti Prabhu. You go first, and then we'll hear from the other participants in order.
So the thing I want to introduce here is that the common thing said by all followers of Ritvikism is that the July 9th letter is Prabhupada's final order on initiations. I just want to quote one thing from Madhu Pandit Prabhu's Shiksha Guru, Krishna Desai, from his book, The Final Order. Sometimes people question the stress placed on this letter over and above other letters or teachings. In our defense, we shall simply repeat an axiom the GBC itself uses in its handbook, Gurus and Initiations in ISKCON. quote, in logic, later statements supersede earlier ones in importance, unquote. And then he continues, he says, since the July 9th letter really is the final instruction on initiations within ISKCON, addressed as it was to the entire movement, it must be viewed in a category of its own. So this is what this is what Krishna Desai says. So so this is Sridhar Srinivasa Prabhu. Would you like to comment?
Yeah. July 9th letter actually has list of 11 Ritviks assigned by Prabhupada who could do initiation when Prabhupada was not well. But that's not a new thing that Prabhupada created. Prabhupada actually was having that going with so many days before even that. So that, but actually the real final instruction, I would say, is the law of disciplic succession, right? The December 2nd, 1975 letter. So
Shall I read that?
Well, yeah, would you please for me?
Sure. Yeah, sure. Okay, so this is a letter to Tushta Krishna on 2nd December 1975. It's quote, keep trained up very rigidly, and then you are bona fide guru, and you can accept disciples on the same principle. But as a matter of etiquette, it is the custom that during the lifetime of your spiritual master, you bring the prospective disciples to him, and in his absence or disappearance, you can accept disciples without any limitation. This is the law of disciplic succession. I want to see my disciples become bona fide spiritual master and spread Krishna consciousness very widely. That will make me and Krishna very happy, unquote.
So you can see clearly that what Prabhupada is saying is, you can become a guru, but wait for the time that the guru's absence. That means after the time of the guru. While the guru is there, you bring the disciples to the guru. So this is etiquette. So that's the final decision of initiations. Now comes the point that whether July 9th, 1977, that instruction supersedes the instruction given on December 2nd, 1975. My answer, I would lead that talk, that particular, and I'm willing to hear from others, but I would say this kind of discussion, this kind of argument that 1977 is later than 1975. So whatever Prabhupada told in 1977 should be the be all end all, and we should discard whatever was before, is like saying, Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, Iti te jnanam akyatam. This is 1863. Guhyat guhyataram maya. Vimshrityaitat asheshnena yate ichchasi tata kuru. So basically, yate ichchasi tata kuru. Arjuna, I told you so many things. You do whatever you want to do. So we can take this instruction, and should we just start acting on our own whims? Arjuna, did he do that? So because that was the final instruction of after saying 18 chapters of Bhagavad Gita. Okay, let's go to another verse. He says, Krishna says, Sarvadharman parityajya mamekam sharanam vraja aham tvam sarva papebhyo mokshishyami ma suchaha. So should we take this as the final instruction? Dharma should be given up. That means this Varnashrama Dharma shloka that Krishna says, Chaturvarnam maya shishtam guna karma vivagasaka tasya kartaram apimam vidya kartaram avyayam. No need for following Varnashrama Dharma. We don't need to, all grihasthas, you're all free to roam anywhere you want to do, as long as you surrender to Krishna. That should not be the understanding. I'm just trying to say that the final instruction, if you go by this chronology of years or chronology of shloka, would be a miserable failure. I think Rama Aprameya Prabhu can also elucidate some of these things.
Yes, Prabhu. Hare Krishna. So there is a famous Islamic preacher by name Zakir Naik. And when he preaches, he claims that because Islam has come at the end and Quran is the last book in the sequence of all the religious books, revealed scripture. So that is the final order of God. And whatever the Quran says is because it is mentioned in chronologically, it's mentioned at the end. So that's to be the final thing. So somewhere this thought process is like this, that the thing that is mentioned by Prabhupada at the end supersedes the other. But Vedic instructions are not like that. Each of the Vedic instructions are aportia, they are eternal. The words of the Vedas are eternal. They are always living through the sound vibrations. And when the Acharya repeats the words of the Vedas, it's not that the subsequent word negates the previous one. Yes. So definitely Prabhupada would not have made a statement, a final order which supersedes or which cancels all the previous orders. So the only understanding that we can derive out of this is this order is also true, previous order is also true, the order previous to that was also true, and the first order that Prabhupada gave would also be true. Now, question is how are we going to harmonize all these things? So that harmonization, it's called Mimamsa, and that Mimamsa can be easily done with the understanding that circumstantially Prabhupada wanted a situation where the initiation should continue. And once Prabhupada is not able to physically do it because he is not here, then the law of disciplic succession that he has instructed about since and which is being followed since thousands of years, that seems to be more logical to continue. This is my understanding.
Can I say something here?
Of course.
In his purport to Chaitanya Charitamrita Madhya Leela, chapter 20, text number 352, Prabhupada wrote that Shastra is the center for all. And a guru is not a guru if he doesn't follow the Shastras. It's written there very clearly. So, he always taught books are the basis, and Vedic literature is the basis of our ideology. And to say that one letter from July 9th changes our ideology is just a type of fanaticism. Just a type of fanaticism. There's a lot of, criticism that our gurus so many ISKCON gurus have fallen down. So the system of gurus that is followed in ISKCON is flawed. And because we aren't following this July 9 final order, we have a flawed system. But in way back in just after Prabhupada, a couple years after he started ISKCON in 1966, he wrote a letter to a disciple named Janardhan Das, who I don't know, I never met, I've just seen the name. But it's written in that letter that a devotee who is not on the highest platform, who's not a liberated soul, can act as a guru if he strictly follows the disciplic succession. Then, they say Prabhupada initiated so many people after he passed away. Then why did Prabhupada use the terms disciplic succession? Succession means somebody succeeds someone else. So a lot of illogic is being spread by the proponents of this so-called Ritvik system of initiation. Back in January 1999, we had a conference on Vaishnava Diksha in Bangalore at the Purna Pragya Vidyapith, which I organized with the blessings of and the cooperation of the late Vishwesha Tirtha Swamiji, Pejawar Mutt from South Karnataka. It used to be called South Canara, now it's Udupi district. And he and his Shiksha Guru, who was Palimar Swamiji, Vidyamanya Tirtha, they attended this Goshti, Vidvat Goshti. And one after the other scholars said, the guru does not give initiation after he disappears. And Madhu Pandit's brother-in-law came there, Chanchalapati Das. Pejawar Swami apologized, said, I apologize. He asked me if I could come. And Pejawar Swami was highly respected by everybody. So if he said he could come, who's going to oppose? And we didn't oppose, but we didn't invite. But anyway, he brought a great scholar who is no longer there, Kirti Pandurangi, who was head of Sanskrit department at Bangalore University. And they brought the July 9th letter. Pejawar Swami took the letter in his hand, looked at it and said, no. No. So these people are not, the people who are propagating this have become fanatics. They don't listen to logic and reason, and they're propagating. I mean, there are many institutions in India and abroad. I can give one example, since you talked about the Islamic preacher Zakir Naik. Everybody knows, it's public knowledge, that there's a sect of Muslims in Pakistan called Ahmadiyas. And one fellow named Ahmed, I don't know the whole history, but it's 100, 125, 150 years ago, proclaimed himself the prophet, the next prophet. Well, most Muslims, can take that as a great insult to the, prophet of Islam. And they regularly send these followers of Ahmed to Yamalokam through this means and that means. So that's also fanaticism. So fanaticism can be anywhere. It can be in any sect, any institution. And what does fanaticism mean? It means that you go beyond logic and reason and proper etiquette, shishtachar. So I'll end my remarks here, because I think Sridhar Srinivasa Prabhu would like to say something.
Yeah,
Before you say something, I want to raise an important doubt, or actually a rebuttal to this law of disciplic succession. And this is also from the final order, which is it's this. So Krishnakant Desai has said, it's apparent that in writing to these devotees, telling them they could take disciples if they just held on a little longer, Srila Prabhupada was simply trying to keep them in devotional service. In so doing, there was at least the possibility that in time their ambitious mentalities might become purified. And then he further goes on, eagerness to accept worship and followers is actually a disqualification for a spiritual master. We can only marvel at the power of the false ego that even in the presence of the most powerful acharya the planet had ever seen, some personalities still felt amply qualified to initiate their own disciples right under Srila Prabhupada's nose. And then he goes, this is also, he keeps going on. Humble devotees who diligently perform their service and selfless sacrifice to their spiritual master would never have received a letter describing their glowing future as diksha-gurus. Why would Srila Prabhupada only seriously promise diksha-guruship to those who are most ambitious and hence least qualified? So here he's trying to say that Prabhupada, that this letter that they got, it was actually misleading them. You can't, that what Prabhupada was saying was not actually, it was not actually true. He's saying that, Prabhupada says law of disciplic succession, so that's not true. But important point is that that the smritis, that the category, it's by far the largest category of literature in Vedic literature. Smriti means that which is remembered by those who know the Vedas. So if a guru, if you're comfortable saying that your guru misleads people and lies, then how could how could you even trust anything he writes? So therefore the Bhagavatam says, Ishvaranam vachah satyam tataiva charitam kvachit desham yat sva vacho yuktam buddhimam tat samacharit. The statements of the Lord's empowered servants are always true, and the acts they perform are exemplary when consistent with those statements. Therefore, one who is intelligent should carry out their instructions. So the words, the statements of the Lord's empowered servants are always true. This is the standard. So to suggest that Srila Prabhupada was misleading his students, that he was, that he might have lied or told a benevolent lie or something like that, this is totally against the Vedic tradition. It's against the shastras, and there's just can you imagine this? You're going to my spiritual master, he misleads people. How is that glorification of Prabhupada? That's foolish. That is so it's just awful.
I think what you're pointing out is that in the letter of 1975, where Prabhupada talked about the law of disciplic succession, that was somehow reversed by this July 9th letter.
That's correct.
How could it be? How is it possible?
And
Why
so
would Prabhupada write one thing and contradict himself?
Well, that's the first thing. But this evidence is just so potent that they had to somehow or other discredit it. Because, in the July 9th letter, not the July 9th letter, but in this letter to Krishna, both things are there. We bring spiritual master during the life, we bring disciples to the spiritual master during his lifetime, and then in his absence, you may accept disciples. Both things are there. And what that does is that naturally limits the July 9th letter to the lifetime of Prabhupada.
Yeah. Saying that Prabhu, Krishna Kirti Prabhu, Basu Ghosh Prabhu, what you are saying, identifying a big fault in K.K. Desai. What he is saying is Prabhupada made up on his own. But Parama Samhita 8.61 clearly says, Shishyastvam upasarpantu. At the time of initiation, may disciples come to you. So this is Shruti Shastra Nindanam. By saying that Prabhupada is speaking something just for the time being is an insult to this Pancharatrika Vidhi. What Prabhupada said is there in Shastra. He is not speaking something to make up. You see what there is a default power of attorney given that may disciples come to you. And Prabhupada is saying the other etiquette, that while your guru is there, you bring them to the guru. So just wanted to add that point. And I have two more points, but if somebody else has something more to say on this.
I do.
Yes.
There's the purport in Srimad Bhagavatam 4:28-31, where Prabhupada clearly writes in the purport that my God brothers and I, we may not be working conjointly, but we're producing many disciples and spreading this Krishna consciousness movement all over the world. So here, his God brothers can make disciples according to what he wrote in the purport, and he was making disciples. But according to this Ritvik system of initiation, only Prabhupada can give initiation. So that means his God brothers couldn't. So that contradicts what Prabhupada wrote in the purport. So now what should we accept? What Prabhupada wrote in the purport, or this ideological concoction that cancels it all out, and you declare that, well, Madhu Pandit was actually initiated by Prabhupada. Well, then everyone was in the whole world, that's Christianity. Damani, 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 you're all Christians now. You throw water on them and they became Christians. So this is an ideological blunder. And it's ideological deviation. And we can't accept it. If we found it in Shastras, we would accept it. If it was clearly stated again and again by Prabhupada, so many things disciplic succession, there are 1,600 references, but there's no place where Prabhupada said, I will continue to give initiation for all time. You're all my disciples. Even after I leave this world, everybody will continue to remain my disciple.
We find Shastric reference.
What do you think, Rama, Aprameya, Prabhu?
Yes, Prabhuji. So, regarding this fall down thing and the July 11th letter connection, that No, there are fall downs of the gurus. So on this, I would like to comment. You see, this is the basic mistake of all the social reformers in the past. Something looks bad and an alternative theory looks better. For example, the kingship looks bad and democracy looks better, but we will go for it, although it's not shastrically authorized. Or communism was also the case. In the West, it was about Protestants. In India, it was about the abolition of caste system and equal status for everyone. All these ideas look very attractive. But because they are not based on Shastras, eventually Utpataiva Kalpate, Shruti Smriti Puranadi Pancharatiki Vidhi Vina, Ekantiki Harer Bhakti Utpataiva Kalpate. Now it looks very attractive that there was no case of Prabhupada's falling down. So if we take initiation from him, then there is no risk at all. But because it's not authorized by Shruti Smriti Puranadi, eventually it will be a soup. That is the point I would like to add in this.
You mean posthumous initiation? That Prabhupada is not with us and trying to
Yes. Posthumous initiation. When he is not with us. Yes.
You know, even utilization of the word God brother or God sister meant that you have a common guru.
Yes.
And Prabhupada's God brothers, we know that they made their own disciples by what Prabhupada wrote in his purport. So they had different gurus. And this group, they have wealth. They have big temples, but that doesn't validate in inventing a new idea. They should be following the tradition. Evam parampara praptam means following the tradition. And there's a Gaudiya, well, at least we say we're Saraswats, follower of Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati, and he started this tradition.
There's one more.
Sorry.
I would like to ask one question in this regard. Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
Apart from the TFO, the final order, let's have all the Prabhupada books studied. We ourselves came to Krishna consciousness. From the beginning, we studied Prabhupada books. Of course, there is a heavy discussion on the need of a guru taking initiation. What is the immediate meaning we got from that when we studied Prabhupada books? Did we get the meaning that, okay, one of these people will be our spiritual masters, we'll get initiated from them physically? Or did we get the meaning that some previous acharya or Prabhupada, I will directly get initiation from? What is directly apparent? We say Prabhupada Bhagavad Gita as it is, or Prabhupada's books as it is. So when the as it is meaning comes to us, what is the first as it is understanding a person develops? He would develop an understanding that I have to take initiation from a living guru. Now you have to make a Gaunartha. You have to make another interpretation. See, there is a July 11th letter which actually means something else, and then you have to explain the person. So when the direct meaning of Bhagavad Gita as it is or Prabhupada's books as it is very apparent, why go for the indirect meaning using the July 11th letter and other evidences? That is my question.
I would like to respond to that. You know, the first thing is that when we say something is as it is, one thing is that inevitably that you know, we've seen in Prabhupada's statements that sometimes you'll find Prabhupada saying different things at different times on the same topic, and sometimes those things clash with each other. So I want to read an important thing from the late Thomas J. Hopkins, you know, a friend and, you know, and ISKCON observer. So he said in an essay titled The Search for Self-Identity regarding ISKCON, he says, quote, "The search for self-identity has already started on one level in the passionate exchanges of arguments and counter-arguments, charges and defenses on ISKCON-related internet sites, which help identify some of the critical issues. Discussions at this level, however, typically generate more heat than light and seldom resolve any issues of real importance. What is needed is a long-term commitment by ISKCON to the kind of theological enterprise that is at the heart of most religious traditions, a continuing critical assessment of the tradition's sources of authority, both personal and scriptural, to gain further insights into their meaning, and a continuing evaluation of its institutions and practices to find the best ways to respond to the current circumstances." Now he says here, this is an interesting statement, "The issues involved in such an enterprise are typically not at the level of facts, but at the level of values, interpretations, and priorities. Many of these disagreements within ISKCON, by contrast, involve claims that Prabhupada said this versus claims that Prabhupada said that. This is the kind of literalist proof texting that characterizes Christian and Muslim fundamentalists, and it basically settles nothing because the proof presented on both sides is all on the same level. It is one quote versus another, with no systematically applied exegetical principles to determine their relative authority. So on this point, the need for exegetical principles or principles of interpretation, basically what this is saying is that some statements of Prabhupada have more authority than other statements of Prabhupada, okay? So Prabhupada, he especially gave emphasis to his books, okay? He said books are the basis and so forth. And actually this has its basis in Sanatana Dharma Vedic Shastra. So one shloka from the Yajnavalkya Smriti that Prabhupada himself quoted is Shruti Smriti Sadacharaha Swasya Cha Priyamatmanaha Samyak Sankalpajaha Kamo Dharma Moolam Midam Smrtam. So what this means is that the sources of Dharma are Shruti, Smriti, Sadachar, Swasya Priya, whatever is dear to the acharya, and then also the fifth item there is called a sankalpa, or a vow to do something that arises out of a desire to do something virtuous. So Yajnavalkya calls these the 5 sources of knowledge of Dharma. So it's also understood that there's a hierarchy here. That first you have the Shruti, these are the Vedas, Upanishads. This is very strong authority. Prabhupada himself said it, it's very strong authority. And then the next is Smriti. Now the Smriti is, again, this is made by people who know the Shruti. And so that means that this also has authority, but it's not as great as the Shrutis. So therefore, there's a rule, and Rama Aprameya Prabhu mentioned the Mimamsa, but Srila Jiva Goswami also quotes this rule from Mimamsa from the different shastras, that in the case of in the case of a stronger source and a weaker source, you have to understand the weaker source in light of the stronger source, not the other way around. In other words, practically what this means is that you take the stronger source, in this case like the Shrutis, and then you take the Smritis, and you may have to come up with an understanding of that, which may not be direct, but is compatible with the Shrutis. So similar things. So in Prabhupada's statements, we have that kind of gradation. But in this particular case, this December 2nd letter to Krishna, Prabhupada says this is the etiquette. Okay? Etiquette means sadachar, right? Sadachar, it means sadachar. So you have sadachar. So Prabhupada establishes the authority of this law of disciplic succession on the level of sadachar. Okay, that means
sadachar means proper behavior.
Yeah.
When you translate sadachar is a Sanskrit word.
Right.
Sanskritam.
It means
but the English is proper behavior.
It is proper behavior, but even also as important as that is to understand that just like in this sister shloka to Yajnavalkya Smriti, Vedokilo Dharma Moolam.
Vedokilo Dharma Moolam.
Yeah, Smriti Shile Chatadvidam. Acharas Chaiva Sadhunam. So Sadhunam. So it's Acharaha of the sadhus. That's plural. That's Bahuvachanam. So
but acharaha means behavior.
Behavior, but
behavior of the holy persons.
Sadhunam.
Sadhunam. Right. Of holy persons. Of holy persons.
Bahuvachanam. It's not sadhu, but sadhunam. So that's very important.
Persons, not
person.
Persons.
Persons, yes.
Yes.
Sadhunam. So what this means, so Prabhupada establishes the authority of the December 2nd letter to Tushta Krishna, the law of disciplic succession is at the level of Sadachar. Now, Prabhupada's letter to his July 9th letter, you cannot call that Sadachar. It's authority because it's coming from Prabhupada, but it's not Sadachar. It's his order. So how do you resolve these two? How do we resolve these two sources? Is that the personal order from the guru should be understood in light of the Sadachar, because that succession, according to Yajnavalkya, first you have the Shruti, then you have the Smriti, then you have the Sadachar, then you have the personal preference, Atmatushti, Swasya Cha Priyamatmanaha. That's at that level. It's at the lower level. It's not that it's not an authority or source, but you just have to understand it in light of the higher authority, which is the Sadachar. So
there's a little historical perspective here that's required.
Yeah.
The historical perspective was Prabhupada had become extremely ill and he was unable to properly function. He was bedridden. And so therefore, he had this letter written by Tamal Krishna Maharaj that henceforward, Ritviks will initiate on my behalf. So they were acting on as his representatives during his lifetime.
Right.
That they would continue to be the gurus forever, Ritviks forever, is a concoction.
So,
well, it has to be. One second, but it has to be like that because the letter to Tushta Krishna with the law of disciplic succession is at the level of Sadachar, that you have to understand that July 9th letter in the context of that letter. And so that defines the range, that defines the limit. So
what you mean is that they were bringing the disciples to Prabhupada while he was still on the planet, but he didn't intend for them to bring disciples to Prabhupada and that they would be called Prabhupada disciples forever.
Right.
That's the
and this letter.
I'd like to.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'd like to share an episode from Ramanujacharya's life. Basu Ghosh Prabhu mentioned some time back that Prabhupada says Ramanujacharya's guru is Yamunacharya. If you go to that history, Ramanujacharya was in Kanchipuram and Yamunacharya was down south in south of Srirangam, or
he was in Srirangam.
Srirangam, yes.
And his base was Srirangam, his headquarters.
It's south of Kanchipuram. So it's quite far away. In those days, they would walk. So Yamunacharya wanted to spot and bring Ramanujacharya from Kanchipuram to Srirangam. So he sent Mahapurna, go bring him. And it took a longer time for Mahapurna to spot Ramanujacharya, and then they both come. So here, the intention of Yamunacharya was to initiate Ramanujacharya as his own personal disciple. Now, by the time Ramanujacharya comes and meets, he couldn't meet. He only met the Divya Shariram. Yamunacharya left body. I wanted to use a respectable term, not say dead body. And Ramanujacharya was very upset and he is wanting to find what did Yamunacharya wanted me to do. So he started asking to that Divya Sharira in front of him questions. I'm saying Yamunacharya is not there, but his body is there. So Rama and his hands were folded like this, mushti. So he asks, 3 questions, and Yamunacharya starts to release one finger at a time. I don't want to go through the details, but one of the questions is, you want me to write Vedanta Sutra Bhashya? Yes, comes through. You want me to write a commentary for Vishnu Purana? Yes, comes through. Now, at this stage, Yamunacharya's body is directly communicating with Ramanujacharya. Even though Yamuna left, Yamunacharya had left the body. So, should we say Yamunacharya should be the guru of Ramanujacharya? No. Ramanujacharya never, in his Guru Parampara Pramanam, it is always Ramanujacharya Munim, Lakshmana Muni. He is called Lakshmana Muni in Sri Vaishnava Sampradaya because he is incarnation of Lakshmana. And then comes Mahapurna. And then comes Yamuna Muni. So the tradition is very clear that Ramanujacharya did not accept Yamunacharya as the posthumous guru, even though he had direct interaction with him in ways that we cannot even imagine. That's point number one. Next thing I want to add quickly is that M.A. Venkata Krishna Swami, who was the previous, he is a great,
Head of the Department of Vaishnavism at Madras University.
Yeah,
He's retired. He's retired.
But he is the author of Gita Charyan. His house is right off the Triplicane temple, and is a great disciple coming in the Pillalokacharya Vamsa.
Prabhu, many of the viewers of this podcast may not understand the Triplicane temple. Tiruvalikeni is the actual name, as you know.
Okay.
And it's in Chennai. It's a Parthasarathi temple. It's an ancient temple.
Ancient temple. So,
right. For those who don't know.
Okay. So I was talking to him today. I asked him, Prabhuji, when you get Samashrayanam, they call Samashrayanam the Pancha Samskaram, what we go as first initiation, you get a new name as part of Nama Samskar. So I asked Prabhuji, what is your Namam according to that Pancha Samskar? He said, my Christian name, birth name was Venkata Krishnan. And because it was already having Venkata and Krishna in it, my guru added Ramanuja Dasan to it. So then I asked, what is your relationship with Ramanuja Acharya? He said, he is my guru. I asked, in what ways he is your guru? He said, I go through my Samashrayana Acharya and reach up to Ramanuja Acharya. So he is my Paramaguru. So this was that even the Sri Vaishnava understanding, their tradition, it's 1,000-year-old tradition, which clearly it doesn't go, if somebody is getting initiated in Sri Vaishnava, they don't claim as direct disciples of Ramanujacharya. Now, I want to conclude that as Vasu Ghosh Prabhu explained, Prabhupada gave this Ritvik system, he established time being as a power of attorney. In a power of attorney, the person giving power, that power of attorney document, power of attorney is valid only until the person is in this planet. The moment the person actually who gave the power leaves, the executor cannot hold the document and do anything. So it is even in the mundane, of course, everything is based on Dharma Shastra. So this kind of inheritance that you can say, or loosely say, we can continue to become disciples of an Acharya who has left us in this manifest vision is something not at all, based on Shastra. So that's my point.
You have anything you want to add, Rama Aprameya Prabhu? Any thoughts?
I think most of the points are covered. In this context, I don't think anything else.
Okay. So,
I think it's a good idea to keep this brief and invite everyone to watch the next episode of this discussion. We'll have some other topic related to this, and we'll have another half an hour talk at that time. We want to keep the attention span, to be clear and frank, we want to keep everyone's attention span going. We don't want them to lose interest in the topic. And if we stretch it too long, they lose interest. People's attention span is not so long. But having said that, this first part, this is the second part, but the first part we feel was successful. It got our message out to quite a few people. And it will continue to, this whole series will continue to be seen and heard. And we hope that those who are innocent, who are not fanatics, and who really seriously want to consider the issues, will take very seriously what's been spoken here today. So can we conclude then today's installment? And Vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Thanks to those who participated. Thanks to the viewers. And any sincere questions are welcome. You can put your comments in the comment section on the YouTube page. This will be published on the ISKCON India Scholars Board website page. Krishna Kirti Prabhu can clarify that if he feels. And we'll also have it posted over at the www.akinchana.net. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Till next time.